Test.
Good afternoon, everyone. I see it's almost full, we're still waiting, but it's time. We should start on time. So, hey, I would like to welcome each one of you who have come in the name of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And it's such a wonderful, as you see here, forgiving the unforgivable, such an important topic in one's life, right? Every day when we say the Lord's Prayer, we pray that, Lord, forgive those who have sinned against us, so that we'll be forgiven. So there are many people who have hurt us. It is also possible that we hurt other people too. So it's both to be forgiven and to forgive others. And as you come here, I would like to again remind you of the power of the Lord, power of the word of the Lord of Jesus Christ. His word has so much power. His word has so much strength. His word is alive all the time, which works in our hearts. So I would like to welcome each one of you. Thank you again for coming. Welcome. And I pray that whatever you hear will work in your hearts to bring that change, give that ability to forgive others. And if you have hurt anyone, to go and seek forgiveness. So thank you all. Without much delay, I would like to welcome Pastor Tim, who is going to deliver this message.
Thanks. I can take that. Yeah. And several ways we're going to conduct this, okay? One of the ways to conduct this is that I want to give you an opportunity to just relax, because there's no need for carpets on the floors. You can grab a coffee if you want to and just relax and take what you need to. For those who are online, welcome as well. But there's a mic that's facing in your direction where you are, okay? So throughout this seminar, as I'm speaking, you have the opportunity to ask questions. If it happens that the question is going to be addressed in the course of the seminar, I'll say it. If I need to kind of do a little bit of segue to actually address your question specifically, because it's such a big topic and very deep, ask the questions that you need to ask. Don't need to state your name, address, and telephone number to do that. Just ask the question, right? And you don't have to come to the mic. So long as you project yourself a little bit more, the people who are online will be able to hear that as well. So that will be another way to do it. For those who are online, if you don't mind with your, I think you're on YouTube, so there's a chat function on YouTube. Just type in your question, and Joshua there will check it for us and read out your question if it's something that we can address again. If it's on the route of our presentation, I will say we'll come to it later. If it's pertinent to what we're talking about, I'll address it if I'm not going to cover it. And if it's extremely personal or totally out of topic, I will say, can we talk about that after? How's that? Okay, agree? So everybody can actually, don't worry about extending the time of the seminar, because I'll try to keep it to 2:30 when we'll end, all right? So, let's start up. I chose this picture of forgiving the unforgivable because forgiveness represents something to me that I don't think it represents to a lot of people. You'll see that in this picture that I've chosen, a dark forest with a bright light. The bright light is forgiveness in a dark place. Most people see forgiveness in the opposite way. That means when total bright ground, forgiveness is blackening out a spot. You don't want to remember it, don't want to think about it, therefore you blacken out a spot. And forgiveness to us in that case, if you're blackening out a spot, is like many pitfalls, and then you're just trying to avoid those pitfalls. But forgiveness really is that we live in this emotional darkness, and forgiveness brings light. So it brings freedom and ability to walk in the light. And so I'd like for you to kind of turn that sock inside out if you have had a notion of forgiveness that has to do with blackening out what we know. It's actually exposing what we ought to know and how we ought to walk. Let me start up with, I think I need to go on first, talking about a little bit about this idea of forgiveness from a, somehow it's not going, or am I doing something wrong here? Still no response. You want to try it? The lights comes on, but no one's at home. Let's look at it from a philosophical point of view. So that's where most people begin. Because the forgiveness is such a huge thing, a huge topic, it's very difficult to grapple with it. So most people start with the philosophy of forgiveness. And we are not alone, because the philosophers of old have actually looked at this and tried to deal with it. So I'm going to, it's cherry picking, all right? I'm going to pick 3 people in history who have dealt with and talked about forgiveness, and there are many more. So forgive this very spotty picking of philosophy. But I want to show you how people have thought about forgiveness. Are we okay with that? Can you hit it again? The first person I'd like to highlight is a man named Socrates. Some of you know him. Socrates said this: "One should never do wrong in return or mistreat any man, no matter how one has been mistreated by him." So Socrates addresses forgiveness in regards to say, wait, let's not talk about forgiveness as yet. Let's talk about how we should be able to treat each other. Then he addresses, when he was asked directly, what about forgiveness? And he wrote this in his conversation with Plato. But to forgive, it may be that God can forgive sins, but I don't see how. So to Socrates, the idea of forgiveness, as he thought about it, as he dug deeper and deeper into thinking about what forgiveness is a mystery. He doesn't know exactly how forgiveness can be achieved. And of course, by the time we actually walk through some of these issues, you'll discover why it's such a mystery, okay? Is that thing ready, or do you want to hit it again? The next person that we want to, can you advance that? The next person that I want to talk about is this man named Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche, we've tried to talk about this, Tom, that Nietzsche has had issues, many issues, and many of them have to do with how he interacts with society and with people. This is translated from German, so it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily sound flowing in English, so let's try this. We're going to read it, okay? It's a translation from German. "It is far pleasanter to injure and afterwards to beg for forgiveness than to be injured and grant forgiveness." So you get the idea? So he's saying, you ask about forgiveness? Let me tell you, it's far better to ask for forgiveness after you've injured someone than to grant forgiveness after you've been injured. He who does the former, that is, injure and then ask for forgiveness, gives evidence of power, and afterwards kindness of character. That's how his pen killed so many people, right? The other, that is, who is injured first and then wants to grant forgiveness to others, if he does not want to be thought inhuman, must forgive, because of this coercion. Pleasure in the other's humiliation is slight. So you want to, his idea is that even in forgiveness, you want to have power over the other person. Because if you read Nietzsche enough, the idea of power to him is central. Power over people. So unforgiveness is power. And to understand forgiveness and power, you you've got to understand the entire Third Reich as to how it worked. The idea is that Hitler loved Nietzsche, and out of his need to so-called ask for forgiveness, he first and foremost injures, and he says, "Oh, please forgive me," and you go, "I don't think so." An entire group of people in this world was almost annihilated. Ask any Jew about the Holocaust and say to them, what if Hitler today asks you for forgiveness? The answer would be no. It's impossible. An entire group of people, even entire people reading history, can't forgive. So you see how deep those footprints of forgiveness or unforgiveness are. It is because it comes out from a desperate history of a philosophy that talks about powerlessness and unforgiveness. Can you hit the button again? The third person we want to reach for is Einstein. Oops. The third person we reach for is Albert Einstein. And he says, wow, what a thinker. We have his brain preserved. Did you know that? We have his brain preserved. I don't think we'd do anything about it yet. But to Einstein, he said these words when he addressed forgiveness. Weakness, weak people, revenge. So far, so good. Strong people, forgive. Interesting. Intelligent people, do what? Ignore. Now, you hear that, you go, oh, I want to be an intelligent person. What he's saying is the struggle with forgiving equals confusion. If you want to be confused, you talk about forgiveness or unforgiveness. If you're smart enough, don't look at it. Don't even consider it. Ignore it. If you're hurt, walk away. Ignore it. If you're hurt so badly and it's hard to walk away, you want to be strong? Forgive. You want to be weak? Revenge. But if you're smart, walk away. Ignore. The struggle of forgiveness, I think this is the most honest of the three that says it's an incredible... Actually, Socrates was pretty honest as well. I don't know how he can do it. The philosophy of forgiveness leaves us empty because somehow or other we look at forgiveness and we say, oh, how about me? I can't forgive. So I'm going to talk about the struggle of this forgiveness. It's because it's not philosophy that drives us, it's emotions. Forgiveness is not just a concept, but it's an emotion. It kicks up very powerful emotions. And one of those emotions is an irreconcilable wound that it leaves with us. Think about what I just described, the Holocaust. It's not your wound. As a people, you're thinking, can we forgive Hitler? Most of us here are not from Jewish background. But to think of it as forgiving this individual who has perpetrated such errors against humanity, you feel, ugh. Let's go a bit further. People who have come out of situations of physical or sexual abuse. Can you forgive because the wound is still there within you? Or people who have lost and lost deeply. This irreconcilable wound causes forgiveness to be to sow an incredibly deep emotion in our lives. The second thing is memory, inerasable memory. My dad suffered from dementia towards the end of his life. And it was so interesting. You know, he would have an argument with me, loud and vociferous. He'll say things and so on, which is not normally like that. He's a pretty gentle man, but he just lost it. He would yell and scream at me. I'd be standing there listening to him. Yeah, Dad, yeah, Dad. You know, it's easy to forgive him because the next day you can't remember what he did. If we have only memory, right? Washed away like the ocean, then we can remember, but you can't. Some people use the word forgive and forget. Is it really possible? Are we like videotape is no longer, are we like some machine that we can, all gone. We can't remember anymore. Forgive and forget. Forgetting is a practice forgetting. And forgetting has to do with the emotion, not with the event. But a lot of the times, this inerasable memory causes us huge amounts of inability to handle this thing called forgiveness. And the third of these powerful emotions is that this grief that we have. And most people don't realize how much grief we carry around, especially after lengths of time have gone through. Somebody cheated us. Nobody knows because it's so confidential. Or maybe there's a non-disclosure agreement that you have signed with some company, some person. They paid you money, but its grief is still there. You can't get rid of it. And that unimaginable grief is huge. And we can't somehow sit down with somebody, process that grief because it's done. It's there. It's like this stone inside our heart. And the fourth thing in regards to this is the anger. Anger, this is not a seminar about anger, I can do it another time. But anger is a response that is a coping mechanism within us. We cope with things in our lives in anger. Consider a little baby that has anger. You don't have to teach a baby how to cry and contort his face or her face and look at you with this evil eye. Imagine your evil eye with your little baby. But you have to actually do hours and hours of, sometimes some people are magical, they do it in minutes, peekaboos to make a kid laugh or smile, but you don't have to make a kid cry and yell at you. The reason is because anger is so deeply embedded in our emotional being. It's a defense mechanism that's given to us so that if something bad happens, we can vocalize, we can do something, push away. And most people, I used to pastor a church where there were a lot of young men and young women, and the habit between young men and young women is that they fall in love with each other, right? Really quickly. And then, of course, after a while, really quickly, they fall out of love, right? And I'll walk along the corridor, I'll see this person, boy or girl, on the staircase crying. I go, oh no, another one. Oh, crying, so-and-so broke up with me. So I try to comfort him or her, and I wait. I wait for her to get angry. How can he be talking to other people when I'm crying in the corridor? I wait for her to get angry, because once she's angry, I know she's getting past it. Because anger is one of those coping mechanisms against harm. By the way, as the individuals helping people to kind of get better at handling these kind of things, I go up to them, I try to comfort them in their anger, to steer their anger towards a resolution, and most people don't. When they are hurt, the anger turns into an irresolvable type of anger. You cannot get rid of the anger. It turns inwards, it turns outwards, it becomes bitterness, it becomes hard, and the anger carries on because even though it is a defense mechanism, it can go out of control. And a lot of us do. And these emotions of the wound that's irreconcilable, the memory that you can't erase, even though people tell you, forget it, just forget it. You can't do it. And the grief that nobody quite understands, especially when it's historical, or an irresolvable anger that nobody can seem to help you grapple with. And then, as you look past your own grief and anger and memories and so on, you see the other person, and you go, how dare you? How dare you? The emotion of observing somebody's undeserved freedom. Those 5 emotions are so powerful that it makes forgiveness impenetrable to any kind of philosophy you might read. For a while, you might actually buy into the philosophy and say, yeah, I need, and then it returns, and it returns, and it returns. And the waves of forgiveness are very difficult. But that's the emotional part of it, because there's the other part of it, and that is that it breeds an incredible amount of powerlessness within the unforgiving. For the unforgiving, I cannot heal I'm tortured all the time. I feel empty. I'm the one who is destroyed. I am the wounded one. And speak to anyone whose forgiveness or unforgiveness seems to keep haunting them, and you'll hear these words over and over and over again. The powerlessness that comes with unforgiveness. Now you can understand why Nietzsche talked about power and forgiveness in one breath. Now you can understand why is it that Albert Einstein said, you can be strong or weak, but intelligent people just walk away from it. Because the emotion that comes with this powerlessness is horrible. This is the reason why forgiveness is such a topic that if you present somebody with this idea of being able to forgive, they go, forget it, I'm not going to listen to it. Or, I'm interested, but I don't know how. And this idea, of course, is not just of the individual across one's lifespan, it's even in an entire society. It takes one presidency for us to actually hate our southern neighbors so much that it's so difficult for us to forgive. How come? And it doesn't even touch us. Maybe someone, it touches me personally. Yeah, okay, all right. But it shows anger, such deep anger within us that we can't even begin to forgive. And so this struggle with forgiveness is an emotional struggle, not just a philosophical one. And I want to take this and say it's also in this incredible balancing skill in which we constantly lose. If I forgive, you might say it sets me free. But the injurer gets a free pass. I don't feel good about pushing this thing up. But if I don't forgive, if I refuse to forgive, I'm wounded. But it feels like the injury is carefree at my expense. It's like, can't win. So you try to forgive, not forgive, and you, like the waves of the sea, you're kind of washed around. Right? And that seesaw turns into a sword. Because the sword cuts both ways. It's a two-edged sword of forgiveness. On the one hand, there's anger and there's pain that we talked about. On the other hand, there are concepts called unfairness, injustice. So I've described this struggle with forgiveness because amongst all these struggles, apart from pain, anger, injustice, unfairness, is addictions that we get into, is the idea of vengeance, stress, broken relationships, helplessness, payback, power. You discover that if you choose an individual in your life to be your partner who cannot forgive, who has not had a shred of understanding of forgiveness in their lives, you live a terrible life with that individual. If you grapple with a person with lots of anger, you have a terrible life with that person. Long ago, when I got into counseling, I looked at the whole idea of what it is that causes people to break up in relationships. And this is many years ago, about 30 years ago. So I decided to spend some time going to City Hall and downloading the courts and downloading people's affidavits. You know what an affidavit is, right? It's people's statements of this is what you did to me. And I downloaded the affidavits of people who actually filed for divorce or for separation. And I spent a whole week and a half just reading microfiche after microfiche, so it tells you how old I am. Microfiche after microfiche after microfiche, looking at taking notes. And what I wanted to find was what causes people in relationships to fall apart. I came up with 3 things. Ready for them? The top of the list, infidelity. That means unfaithfulness in relationships. It's one of the show kills in relationships. But the other 2 were surprises. The second is money. And the third, close third, is anger. People argue about money, which is basic to control and basic to security in life. And people's dealing with anger in their relationships. Anger, money, unfaithfulness. These 3 things create so much acrimony within relationships that Eventually, when they can't deal with it, they fall apart. And you ask yourself, how come forgiveness, which will actually deal with the central thing of anger, and then addictions, which actually leads to a lot of the unfaithfulness, and the helplessness within the relationship, what do we do with this conglomeration of emotions? This is the reason why whenever I marry people, I look at them and go, let's talk about forgiveness as to what it is. One of the fundamental things that you need to understand walking into any long-term relationship is the understanding of forgiveness. And if you don't understand forgiveness, we're in grave trouble. So, we talked about various things, the philosophy of forgiveness, and the struggle with forgiving. Still haven't arrived at answers. So I'd like to start on the process of giving us answers. But it's a process, so let's start somewhere, okay? Let's talk about the roots of forgiveness. What are the roots of this forgiveness? How does this tree of forgiveness grow? Because if you want to be able to forgive adequately, you need to know where it comes from. So in this root of forgiveness, let's talk about going back to the basics. Where does the term forgiveness come from? We can talk back. Where does the term forgiveness come from? What is its origin? Any thoughts? Religion? Yeah? Accounting. You heard me. Man, we've talked before. Accounting. The fundamental use of forgiveness is an accounting term. Think about it. It's called debt, what? Forgiveness. You walk through life, you go to school, you borrow it from the government, it's called OSAP. At some point, I can't pay, there are no jobs. Yeah, the economy is bad, I can't pay, here's a grant. Not enough, I can't pay. Okay, I want to get elected, so I'm going to forgive you of your debt. Debt forgiveness. It's an accounting term. That's where it comes from. That's its root. And we've talked about all these other things in terms of the emotions and the philosophy of forgiveness, but let's get back to its very basis. The very basis of forgiveness is that it's an accounting term. Now, how does that help us? Because it helps us when I call it forgiveness accounting. It's like this. Let me give you the illustration here and then bring it to our notion of forgiveness, how indeed to forgive. Okay? Let's just say that you have $10,000, and I came along, and no matter how I did it, I took it from you. All right? Whether I took it from you willingly or unwillingly, you thought that you could give me an opportunity to look after your home. I took $10,000 from you. Maybe I cheated you at a point where you were the weakest. Maybe I defrauded you of $10,000. I don't know. I said, I really need it, man. I'll pay you back next month. Okay? I know you got rent due. I know you've got to feed your kids. I know that but can you please $10,000? Otherwise, I'm dead in the water. And so, take a deep breath. You wrote me a check, $10,000. I cashed it immediately. I took $10,000 from you. Let's just say that's the case. And so that is a debt created. First step. But then comes the second step, and that is I ghosted you. I said to you at the end of the month, I'll pay you. You can't find me at the end of the month. You call me, you text me, you come to my house, you knock on my door, I'm not there. Or at some point, you beg me to pay you and refuse to give. I don't have the money. What can you do? You squeeze water from a rock? I can't give you any money. Or I threaten you and you say, you owe me all this stuff, and whatever it is. You have this $10,000 loss, and I did not pay you. Now that is where a debt is unpaid and thus created. So in the accounting world, a debt now weighs heavily on you, on your heart, because the person who refuses to pay, I came in your house, I'm angry at you, I grabbed the cup, and that cup was left to you by your granddad, to your dad, and then to you. And I took the cup and I go, I know this. I broke the cup. I created a debt. As bad as $10,000. And I stormed out of the room and slammed the door. You might have even driven me out. Doesn't matter. You look there, you stand there, and what's left on the floor? Broken cup. What's left on the table? No cup at all. I have now created an unpaid debt. And somebody walks into your room and he sees the glass on the floor and he looks at you and says, Stephen, how come you didn't clean up the floor yet? Stephen looks at me and says, because every time I step on a piece and I bleed, I remember he did it. I know who he is. I'm not going to forget it. He made me. He broke it. And I says, just go buy another cup. What? From the dollar store? No, I refuse. A debt created, a debt unpaid. Now I want to remember it because I refuse to pick up the pieces. That describes a lot of us who struggle with this thing called forgiveness. And rightly so, Einstein says, it's a huge confusion. Because the third thing occurs. Someone comes to you and says, hey, listen, just pick up the pieces. Just, come on, I'll help you. I'll help you pick up the pieces, all right? No, I'm going to pick it up. And every time you pick it up, you bleed. But you pick it up anyway. And towards the end of the month, when the bills are due, you had to go borrow from the bank. You had to incur your own interests. And you, despite the fact that you had to do that, at some point, somebody says to you, man, it's never going to come back. You're never going to get $10,000 from him. Just let it, what? Go. Wow, it's that easy, eh? So you say, okay, forget it. Debt forgiven. Debt forgiven. Is it that easy? No, not quite so. Not quite so. Some of you will say, well, what if I can't let him go because I can't trust him anymore. You're talking about a different part of it. You're talking about reconciliation. You're talking about if I came back to you and says, oh, I heard you forgave me of my debt. He says, yeah, I did. That means I don't have to pay anymore? Yeah, no, you don't. Can I have another 10,000? Let's see how quickly you can drive me out of your house. Right? That's called reconciliation. That's called trust. It's another matter altogether. Because whereas you may have forgiven the debt, you may not yet be reconciled. We'll talk about that towards the end of it. So a lot of us feel guilty that we haven't forgiven because we don't seem to be able to walk that road of reconciliation. But let's keep forgiveness and forgiveness. Forgiveness is the ability to say within your own heart, forget it, debt is forgiven. That's where the term comes from. Now it becomes a little bit more crystal. But there are certain things which are so hard to process because it's, as I said, there's an emotional thing called hurt. But there's also the emotional thing called an incredible sense of heaviness that comes from hurt. And you understand that every single person who says to you, you got to forgive, starts a process called hope. Hope is constantly challenged. It's constantly challenged by the memories that we can't erase. It's constantly challenged by the fact that the cup is broken and there's still an empty spot on your table. It's still challenged by the interest that you still have to pay on your line of credit. It's still challenged, but there's hope. At least there's hope. Which leads me to the fourth point as to why it is that forgiveness accounting is so difficult. Because it has to do with our willingness to make up for the loss. Okay? This, I think, is the greatest weight of forgiveness handed to a person who says, you got to forgive. You're asking the person to make up for the loss. The $10,000 is still an empty spot. Nobody's going to come along and throw $10,000 at you. That cup, which is given to your grandfather, by your great-grandfather, to your grandfather, to your father, to you, irreplaceable, can never be crazy glued back together again. It's empty. You cannot, if it's your heart that's broken, your willingness to make up for the loss, you are the one bearing the debt. You are the one saying, you abused me. You hurt me so deeply, physically, sexually, emotionally, and yet I'm asked to forgive you. I'm asked to pay for the loss. That's where, number 4, in accounting, is the hardest. See, most of us can sort of understand number 1, number 2, and number 3 even. But it's when number 4 comes in that we're totally unprepared for. It's like a Mack truck running us over on the 401. That's where the key is. Willingly made up for the loss, in fact, willingly pay for what is owed. So, I'm going to take just a few seconds of time, but before I do that, any thoughts, any questions that come to your mind as we talk about the philosophy and the emotion of forgiveness and then the accounting of forgiveness as it comes to this point? If not, you can still interrupt me anytime, all right? Ask the question, because I'm going to take this thing and blow it up a little bit, number 4. The most difficult and yet the most fundamental character of true forgiveness is the willingness not only to write off a debt, but also to repay or to accept with open heart what has been taken from you. That is forgiveness. So forgiveness has those several parts. Number 1, the hurt. Number 2, the heaviness. Number 3, the hope. But then here is the 4th. And that 4th step is, if it's historical, if it's present, if it's deep, the difficulty is to pay for what has been taken with open heart. And here's the practice of forgiveness. Every time you cut your foot on a piece of glass on the floor, and some of us know this, right? You break a piece of glass on the floor, you clean up the pieces as best as you can, yes? Some of you are super vacuum cleaners, right? You bring out your first Dyson, and then you take a second Dyson on it, take a third, you think it's clean, and you walk around, what do you find? Another piece! Where did that come from? Well, that's called forgiveness. It's a process of forgiveness. You keep running across pieces that will hurt you, but then you're willing to set that aside and to pay that which somebody hurt you. And that's awfully difficult. Because you're saying, in forgiveness, you're saying this: what is broken, I will replace. What is irreplaceable, I will do without. What is lost completely, I will rebuild. By the way, if you did this, the idea of learning how to say, I will do this, with the difficulty of number 4, it moves you in the process of forgiveness. People who don't do that will find themselves stuck in one place. I'm going to go backwards here. When they say, no, I will not replace what's broken, doesn't go, because it's number 4. When it says, no, I will not do, I have to do without it, no go. Or, when it's lost completely, I will rebuild. I won't rebuild. I'm not going to clean up the pieces because it sets you free. I'm not going to buy another cup because it reminds me of what you did. It's the whole notion of saying, I will build new memories. I'll create new things. Now, the difficulty with this is not only is forgiveness, and what I've done is, right now, is to actually penetrate a little bit deeper into forgiveness and get you to understand that it's not so easy, but it has to be better understood. The problem is that because in a world of unforgiveness, forgiveness is littered with the damage of really bad advice. Okay? We're so subject to bad advice. So, when I give you examples of this bad advice, you actually may even have received it or thought about it. And thus it confused you. So let me do this. I'm going to give several types of bad advice. The first type of bad advice is famous in Hollywood. The payback forgiveness. Payback forgiveness is this. The premise of payback forgiveness is when you satisfy your need for vengeance, your hurt and heaviness will go away. Have you heard that? You may have, because some of that is, oh, you don't want to break the law, so tell you what, here's a punching doll, here's a person's image on a dartboard, here are darts, go for it. The punching bag, kick it, push it, yell at it, scream, because if you did that at work, you get fired, right? Get it all out. It's called catharsis. It's called payback forgiveness. When you're able to get your energy out in terms of this vengeance to satisfy your hurt and heaviness, your hurt and heaviness will go away. Question, does it work? It doesn't. You're just practicing anger. Someone who goes and do cathartic kicking of a doll, throw darts at an image, all they are doing is practicing anger. And it gets worse and worse because when you practice, it gets better. It doesn't get worse. So I'm going to give it an F. Hope you agree with me. Because there's not just Kill Bill, there's Kill Bill 2. There's Kill Bill 3. Almost every movie that you watch that has got to do with somebody toting guns has to do with payback forgiveness. There you go. Maybe not. Maybe not. This one is so common that I tear my hair out every time I hear it from people. This is the most common of the types of advice that people get. It's called transactional forgiveness. In fact, it's not just individual, it goes on to society. Transactional forgiveness is this. In order for forgiveness to take place, that's the premise, sufficient transaction has to take place. You have to say sorry. You have to do something that will satisfy me so I can forgive you. Say you're sorry, I'll forgive you. Sorry. Not loud enough. Okay, sorry. That didn't sound very sincere. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, now I'm okay, but maybe later I'm not. And you can't not smile for the next 2 years. 3. Maybe 4. Transactional forgiveness doesn't work. Every time you try to make forgiveness a transactional affair, it doesn't work. Transactional forgiveness may be seen as this arrow going both directions. You give me out, if you pay $10,000, no, 20, maybe I'll forgive you the 10. But let's add on top the hurt and the suffering. Let's add on top what transactional forgiveness does not work. And so, hope you agree with me. I'm going to rate this an F. But get this. Almost everywhere you hear people giving you advice to forgive is transactional in nature. Almost everywhere. Years ago, I made a bad mistake. Years and years ago, a young man came to me. He was physically abused by his dad, emotionally abused by his dad, and he was totally in pieces, broken in his life. And as we talked, he began to reassemble some stuff, and he began to forgive, and he began to understand what forgiveness is. And then one day he looked at me and says, "Do you think it's okay if I went up?" He lives up in Barrie. "I'm going to go for Christmas, and I'm going to sit down with my dad. I'm going to say, 'Dad, I forgive you.'" And foolishly, I said, "Sure." You know what happened? He went up there. He described what happened to him, because his dad knows, and says, "Dad, I forgive you." You know what his dad did? "How dare you? I did nothing wrong. You deserved everything that you got." He came back more broken than when I first let him off. Why? Because he thought that transaction, I forgive you, therefore I need to hear from you. And it was okay, I'm so sorry, my son. And the transaction failed. And it was a post-failure. He forgave first, and even then, it cut him so deeply, he could not let it go again. See, transactional forgiveness is an F. But then, you get this people saying to us, "Hey, you know what? You got to forgive yourself." Self-forgiveness. You got to forgive yourself. The premise of self-forgiveness is real forgiveness comes when you can forgive yourself, without which forgiving others is empty. Got to forgive yourself. But here's the thing. Forgiving yourself means you owe yourself $10,000. Anyone agree to that? That's not the origin. I owed myself $10,000 because I chose to forgive. But it sounds like this. You're playing games in my head, my heart, right? Can't do that. Self-forgiveness? I got angry and therefore I got angry because you made me angry, now I need to forgive myself. So self-forgiveness is very important, because if you don't allow that forgiveness to be, but who am I to forgive myself? Can I wash away my own sins? Can I be more free before just because I forgave myself? It's necessary to find forgiveness of self. But self-forgiveness, if you tried it at all, if you have been told to do it at all, and you tried it, and you try it, and you try it, and you try it, there's more to forgive. There's always more to forgive. Or, then you get angry at other people for making you have to forgive. So forgiveness goes in this never-ending cycle. But because it works, I'm willing to say to it D-. Okay? It's not a failure. There's some degree that needs to say this self, this person is forgiven, but I don't think it comes from yourself. And for some people, say, "Oh, I can forgive others, but I need to forgive myself." I think you got it wrong. That's why it's a D- relationship in forgiveness. Now that's really tough, because what I've just done is negated 80% of all the advice that you've gotten. Because if you sat down and thought about it, it doesn't make sense. Somebody broke your cup, you're going to forgive yourself? For what? For forgiving him? For buying a cup from the dollar store? For what? And so it becomes a D minus sort of problem, right? And then you get people coming to you and says, well, okay, forgive yourself egocentrically. Now, don't use that word and make it condemning. It's actually just a description of term. The central premise of egocentric forgiveness is this, that forgiving others is really for your own good. You've heard inspirational speakers say, don't drink poison hoping for someone else to die. That's what egocentric forgiveness is. You forgive for your own good. Somebody described it like this. It's like taking a sword and trying to kill your enemy. But the human compulsion is to grab the sword not by the hilt, but by the blade. Imagine yourself grabbing a sword by the blade and hitting the other person with it. What's going to happen? Anyone? Yeah, you're the one bleeding all over the place. Yeah, you might cause a few contusions with that person, but you are the one bleeding. So what do you have to do? Let go of the sword. Very good. Very good. Because egocentric forgiveness has to do with saying, you got to look after this person who's trying to gain some kind of retribution. The person has to say sorry enough. So, it kind of works. And I'm going to give egocentric forgiveness a grade of C. Because for many people, egocentric forgiveness does work. You can't go about just holding it in and thinking that you can survive this. Now, are you going to live with a C? If I said to you, hey, let's drive across this bridge. Engineers built it and all of them got C's. You go, maybe I'll drive another bridge. Yeah, am I going to drive a bridge when engineers build C's? What do you think? Not really, right? Maybe so, maybe what. I wish that they would all get together and make sure that this bridge is drivable. It works, but it doesn't seem very good. That's where we get to the last two. The next one is called exogenic forgiveness. Some of you will go, let me figure out what that means. Exogenic is actually a term that says something that comes from outside. Exogenic. Genic, origin. Exo, from the outside. Outside origin. All right? Exogenic forgiveness. Exogenic forgiveness is this. The premise of exogenic forgiveness is forgiveness comes from forgiven people. I am first forgiven before I can even forgive. Forgiveness comes from forgiven people who experience the power of forgiveness of their own wrongdoing. Now, this flies in the face of the first whole bunch of advice. Because you want to build that person up in order to forgive. So you do egocentric forgiveness is the best, and then you do the rest, self-forgiveness and so on and so forth. But it doesn't go anywhere, because if you say to this person, you have been forgiven as well, it doesn't feel as we are empowering the individual. That's the problem, that a lot of people don't even begin to touch this type of forgiveness, exocentric. I'm going to say this, that exocentric forgiveness is the only workable type of forgiveness. Because all the others, as I've discussed so far, just doesn't make sense. Even if you come close to it, it doesn't get an A grade. Exogenic forgiveness is when people who have been forgiven forgive others. We know the opposite. Hurt people also hurt others. You heard that one before, right? Hurt people hurt people. You heard that saying before, right? We just don't reverse the car out of the barn. Did you know that forgiven people forgive others more easily? How? When you know you have been forgiven. You're not carrying the load of your own badness. And forgiveness means that you know you have been forgiven, so forgive others. It's not transactional. You're not asking the person to say sorry enough for you to forgive. Because you know that you've been forgiven, though you could not fulfill the requirements for forgiveness. You have been forgiven. Exogenic forgiveness comes from the outside in. Then it goes towards us. Some people call it not orthogenic. It's an algebraic term in which there's a 90-degree relationship. You're forgiven, therefore you forgive. And here's the thing. When you begin to recognize that, it takes a little bit of rethinking through. If I have been forgiven, I forgive. If I have been given, I can give. If generosity has been given to me, I can be generous to others. There's a whole movie made about that concept. It's called Pay It Forward. Have you heard that? Have you seen that? The idea of Pay It Forward is that you do something for someone not because the person deserves it or whatever, because you serve the person in need. And when the person says, thank you, why did you do this? It's just because I want to do this for you. Remember, do it to others, right? That was the whole premise of that movie. How many of you actually saw it? Pay It Forward. Exogenic forgiveness has to do with forgiveness in that manner. I have been forgiven, therefore I forgive. And that is the only thing that seems to make sense. Because forgiveness can't come from anywhere else. If you granted to yourself to forgive, who is going to pay the debt? But if somebody pays your debt for you, if somebody has taken all the stuff that you have done and said, I forgive you, and I enrich you with forgiveness, then you're able to forgive others also. What if I experienced exogenic forgiveness, but I refuse to forgive? Any thoughts? If I experience forgiveness from others and I refuse to forgive, what happens? I'm waiting for an answer. Thoughts? Kathy? I get stuck. I'm jammed. Okay. Yeah, you're pouring into it and nothing comes out. I'll get stuck for sure. That's good. That's a good thought. Anything else? Tom? Shame? Why?
Because someone was kind to you and you refused to be kind to someone else.
That would require an incredible amount of insight, Tom. Because some people resort to transactional forgiveness. They resort to egocentric forgiveness, self-forgiveness, and all the other types of forgiveness, including the very first one, which is not forgiveness at all. We should actually result in being stuck and shame. Maybe that is why many of us fool ourselves that we're not forgiven. Why should I forgive others if I've never been forgiven? Think about it a little bit and you discover there are many things you have done that either deserve forgiveness and you've never received it, or they have never been forgiven for, or you have been forgiven but you forgot. This is where, in the benefit of looking at what the Bible says, is what's called Christocentric forgiveness. Christocentric forgiveness is this, that God first forgave you so that you can forgive others. This is, again, the autogenic relationship, the L-shaped relationship. No one can forgive fully because they themselves need to be forgiven. And perhaps if we go through a whole process of people forgiving each other, it can happen. But what the scripture says is this: as Christ has forgiven me, so I forgive you. That's Christocentric forgiveness. It's a form of what we call the exocentric forgiveness. It's a form of exogenic forgiveness. That I have been first forgiven, and thus I forgive. Forgiveness comes from being forgiven. Forgiven people experience the power of forgiveness of their own wrong, and thus are able to forgive others also. Now, that's a big problem here because a lot of us have been taught that God is a ugly, exacting, I get you wrong, I'm going to make sure I'll stick it to you sort of God. And so, in many cases, it becomes almost as if it resorts back to the first type, and that is there's a payback forgiveness that God always has. And that's why we never reach for it. Every time we think about God, we think about us being unforgiven. Isn't that a movie? Unforgiven, who is it? Sorry? Sean Connery? Was it? I thought it was a cowboy one. But anyway. We come up with this idea that we are not forgiven because God doesn't forgive. He's this big old man in the sky waiting for us to do something wrong. And we don't see that He's a forgiving God who loves His creation. And somehow or other, we come to this idea that it is not, Christocentric forgiveness or exocentric forgiveness is not, it's an F, but really it's an A. It's the only way in which logically forgiveness can take place. So we went through the philosophy of forgiveness, the emotions that generate forgiveness, and the concept for forgiveness. Let me finish it. Willingly paid what was owed to you. First there's hurt, and there's heaviness, and there's hope. And out of that comes a sense of humility. No forgiveness can be given from a high place. It's, I have been forgiven, therefore I forgive. Anyone who thinks they're in a high place to forgive will feel as if they dispense forgiveness like candy. And very soon people are going to owe you candy. Forgiveness has to be taken from a low place. It's humility, and out of humility comes healing. Most of us know this. When we go for a place and we are bleeding, the first place is to acknowledge that you are bleeding. Then have the humility to get the treatment. And then from that comes the healing. Hurt, heaviness, hope, and healing. The four things is what we call wholly forgiving. And I end with this, that these four concepts, hurt, heaviness, hope, and healing, are one side of the story. The other side of the story that will take an entire time for us to engage in is learning how to prevent more hurt from taking place. I gave you the illustration that I lent $10,000 from you, you forgave me, I came back 3 months later and says, oh, I heard you forgave me. Yes, I did. How about another 10,000, please? And you say, no, I thought you forgave me. Answer, I'm setting a boundary with you. I'm setting a boundary with you. You got to learn boundaries, because that's on the other side of forgiveness. Just because you set boundaries doesn't mean you haven't forgiven. Don't get fooled into that. Not only that, there's got to be a view of change. That you have changed. Why? Because if you actually use that $10,000 because you're a drug addict, or because you use that $10,000 because you gambled it away, I need to see change before I even extend $5 to you, right? So there's got to be change. But change comes on the other side of the bridge. Just be very careful. Don't mix it. Right? You forgive first before you actually take the other side of the bridge. And the other side of it is trust. Learning how to trust again. Trust is on both sides. Trust has to be earned, and trust has to be learned. I learned how to trust, but you earn your trust. But guess what is on the other side of the bridge? And then that big word called reconciliation. Friends again. Friends again. If we go back to the Bible, you know what it says? Weird. It's very weird. We have been forgiven. But this road of boundaries, change, trust, and then reconciliation is a whole boundary of things that God teaches us to do. There's a big theological term for it. It's called sanctification. Sanctification is this process. And people say to me, well, so if I did something wrong again, would God forgive me? And I says, but He has already forgiven you. Right? This is the process through which you are learning to govern your mouth, not be a person who goes through the same things over and over again. And He'll set boundaries for you. He'll create change within you. He'll build your trust for Him as you begin to earn your trust in these areas, and then there's reconciliation on a constant basis. This is called sanctification. That's why that big theological term. And then you say, but what happens if I do wrong? And do I have to keep asking for forgiveness? What do you think? Eh? You don't have to keep asking for forgiveness. Why? Because He has forgiven you. I'll give you this interesting story. I was in Thailand when I was in my early 20s. Early 20s. I was in Thailand, and I went to the central part of Thailand, which is very remote. A city, driving towards a city called Nakhon Sawan. And on the road, a friend of mine was driving. He was a missionary in the place. He decided to take me around. And he says, okay, I'll take you around, but be careful because the roads are not very governed. I didn't realize what I was talking about. It was not very governed. We were driving at top speed down this highway, and there were huts all around, and we were going like gangbusters down the road, and a dog runs out in the middle of the road. And it hits his brake, and went, and the thing turned around, and all I could say was the word, dog, dog, dog. And by the time he uprighted his car, he looked at me and started laughing. He says, you know what? If you believed in transactional forgiveness, your last words going to heaven is dog, dog, dog. And I thought to myself, if I were to actually believe in transactional forgiveness of God, I wouldn't just survive with dog, dog, dog. I'll be wrapped in my own thoughts and my own sin, and every day I wake up, I cannot be forgiven. And so the idea of this holy forgiving is the idea that not just that the walk is through this, and thus healing to holy forgiving, but forgiveness grants to the individual we forgive the opportunity to do the rest. But it also grants to us the opportunity to say clearly, what kind of boundaries do I need to draw? What kind of change do I need to see, having forgiven? What kind of trust do I extend? And how can we, in the end, find a second accounting term, reconciliation? Reconciliation, by the way, is an accounting term. Most of us don't kind of realize this until you put it in context. You go, oh, that's right. What is reconciliation, by the way, accounting-wise? For those people who are in accounting, what's reconciliation?
Balancing the rights with the wrongs.
That's right. Then it's zero, right? A mattress is zero. Reconciliation is when you're able to trust again and trust again and trust again. The person has done that, which is changes and so on, and then there's this. That's reconciliation. It's that second accounting term that you can look at. Forgiveness and then reconciliation. But reconciliation cannot be done without forgiveness first. It's like a donut. Reconcile without the middle. No timbit. Right? No timbit, just a donut. Can't do that. Forgive first, and then you reconcile. Questions? Project a little bit so you can be heard. Then you cannot trust.
So what I'm saying is you forgive, not necessarily build trust.
That's right. But if you know that a person cannot be trusted even though you have forgiven, draw your boundaries. Draw your boundaries. Right? And most of us, because we confuse forgiveness with reconciliation, we don't understand boundaries well. Because it makes them both together. Any other questions? So complete that nobody has to comment.
I just wanted to add something. You asked me to do the introduction. I was thinking and I said, I need to introduce you to the audience. I think he's our pastor. He's Dr. Timothy Quick. He's a PhD in psychology. So you know, the in-depth understanding of counseling. He's a renowned Christian counselor. So from the way he presented the whole forgiving the unforgivable is unique. In a sense, it comes from his studies, background as a PhD in psychology on one hand, and as a pastor with so much of what infilling of the Spirit and the knowledge of the Bible. It's a combination of two. You have one on the other side in the theoretical, secular PhD in psychology from York University. And then you have the other side, is the years of serving the Lord and the understanding of the Scriptures. So it's two where you can see that. I just wanted to clarify that. When he asked me to introduce, I was thinking, So you're talking, when you have your questions, it is that with both these backgrounds, you get the answer. So be encouraged to ask questions so that your doubts will be clarified.
Thank you. I was going to ask him to write my resume for me. He'll do a far better job. Any other questions about forgiving? I grant you that when we leave from this place, we will still struggle with forgiveness, but at least I hope that you will understand the logic of forgiveness. And not just the philosophy, not just the emotions, but where it actually does come from and how to actually arrive at that forgiveness, to forgive that which is unforgivable. So back to that first question I asked. If Hitler were to come to you and say, forgive me, please, what would you say? I would say, I forgive you. Your problem is with God, not me. He will look into your heart and ask you, what boundaries have you crossed? What changes have you made? Where have you hurt and not cared? What kind of trust will I give to you? Am I reconciled to you? It's the other side of the bridge. And that's why egocentric forgiveness is a C. We forgive so that we will heal. But it is not to say, I don't forgive you, because I bear the sword. I'm hitting you with the hilt. I'm the one bleeding all over the place. But if I'm forgiven, then I can forgive you. Out of the debt that I owe that has been paid, I take that wealth and give it away. Any other further questions? If not, yes? Is it on? Sliding switch.
Test. So if I'm to sum up what I have learned, Christocentric forgiveness is basically me taking on the pain of the perpetrator in love because I care for that person. So I'm taking their burden, I'm taking their, I'm absorbing the consequence because I care for them. It's just not letting go, but it's giving in love. Not that I'm any saint, but we're to emulate what Christ did for us. And he took our burden.
No, that's not egocentric forgiveness. Egocentric forgiveness is not you taking on the pain.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying Christocentric.
Christocentric forgiveness, no, it's Christ taking on the pain.
I understand that, but as a follower of Christ, we absorb the pain and give it over to Christ. Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not us absorbing it, but rather in everything giving over to Christ. So I have been forgiven, therefore I forgive, because it's him, he who forgives.
Right, I didn't say it correctly, but correct. Thank you.
So if you're asked to absorb other people's hurt as adding pain upon pain, because he has forgiven you, so you forgive. There are a lot of people who actually went through the Holocaust who actually actively forgave so that they were able to do what is right. Tom? You want to get Mike?
I can also just be loud. You're not seeing.
Oh, yeah, loudly, sure.
So, again, it's very simplistic metaphor, but say you're going to the drive-thru at a fast food restaurant, and the person ahead of you has already paid for your meal. You pay, and then so you don't, because someone's already paid for you, you can then use money you would pay for that to pay for the person behind you. Sort of, it's the same sort of transitive thing. You've been forgiven, and so now you can forgive others. Does that make sense?
And technically, you are absorbing that person's debt, absolutely, but the money doesn't come from you.
It's the money has already been paid. So now you have money to spare, and you can give to someone else.
So that's a recommendation for our next fast food restaurant visit. Thank you. Thomas.
Christ-centered, Christo-centered forgiveness. Like, in order for us to forgive, we need to be forgiven. Like, that's the premise. So, I speak on behalf of those who do not know Christ. Like, I don't know Christ. And how can I forgive others without being forgiven in Christ? So that's the first essential step for those who do not believe in Christ. It is the basic premise.
So that's a good question. because I want to ask this question, right? The Christian theology says Jesus died on the cross to forgive sins, all right? So when did he die on the cross? 2,000 years ago. Okay, all right. So does he have to keep dying on the cross to forgive sins? So every time somebody, let's say Sunil over there decides that he wants to be a Christian today, and then Jesus dies on the cross again, and then our friend Don there says, I want to be a Christian today, and then Jesus Christ dies on the cross again today. It doesn't happen that way. It's historical. It's done. All right. So how does it happen? So here's the way that forgiveness, and you have to understand that in the eyes of God, the eternal and the temporal are very much separated, right? That which is eternal sees the beginning from the end. There is no concept of time. I think we learned that in our Bible studies, right? There's no concept of time. That which is temporal has all this definition of time. We started at 1 o'clock, now it's about 2:20. You started off here, you are very different here an hour and a half later. Okay? We're caught by time. God is stepping out of time. When he forgives, that covers all the forgiveness. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's what the Bible says. Here's the problem. Imagine us as being time-oriented. So from the cross 2,000 years ago flows a river. That river is called forgiveness, the source of which is at the cross. That river of forgiveness flows throughout all time, temporal time, flows through all time. If you don't engage in that forgiveness, you are not forgiven. Does that help? Forgiveness has been granted to all who come into that river. But if you don't step into that river, you're not part of that forgiveness. Time is river-oriented. Eternity is when God steps back, it's done, it's finished. The river has been established. What this concept called evangelism, this concept called telling people about who Jesus is to show them the river. To tell them, there's a river there. I have jumped in the river. Come jump with me. And you say no. You don't engage in the forgiveness as a language, right? You don't engage in the forgiveness already given. That is it. So does it help? Right? So this is the reason why. Somebody once said, evangelism is described as a beggar sharing with another beggar where they found bread. Right? So we were sitting down at some place, we were both begging together, and somebody showed me where bread is. I came and says, hey, come on, let's go find bread. And you look at me and says, I like my spot. People are going to take my cardboard. And will you be hungry or you'll be fed? But there's a banquet already shed for you. That is the theology of forgiveness by God. Right? And the invitation is for us to step into that river of forgiveness. The invitation is to say, when you experience the forgiveness of God, time eternal, from beginning to end, forgiveness is given. Now you go and live the life, not only of forgiveness, but forgiving, and then of change, and then of trust, building trust and creating trust, and then of reconciliation. Project.
I had a thought that might help if people are
She's going to do it anyway.
struggling to understand.
Use the mic for those who are online so they can hear you too.
I thought, normally my voice can project across an entire room, so I thought, I just had a thought for those struggling with the concept of, well, if he's going to keep forgiving us every time. I had a thought that, one of the first words in the Bible, in Genesis, is, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. So it's kind of like we see time the way we do. If anyone's ever seen the movie Interstellar, where, they travel other planets, and 1.2 seconds there is a whole day on Earth. It's kind of like that, only times 10. His act of forgiveness, because he's both the beginning and the end, that single act lasts for all time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Like Tenet. You should go watch that movie, man. but the issue, of course, is that in Tenet, it's just a different passage of time, right? And you read it in Narnia Chronicles, the children step into the water, they come out of the water, it's a different passage of time, but time still passages, right? In eternity, you step back. It's like this. I said time is like a river. You are on a boat on the river. You know what eternity is? Eternity is stepping on the bank and watching the river ships go by. And you are in this supersonic car. You drive up the river and you drive down the river. It makes time is unessential to eternity. We live in time. God lives eternal. But he chooses to step from eternity into temporal to show us that we can step into the river called forgiveness. Right? That's what Christmas is about. Christmas is about the idea of incarnation, taking the entire ocean of God and pouring into a bottle. That's what it is. Right? And then offering to you a drink from which you'll never thirst again.
Here's a question from someone online. I want to ask, what if the reconciliation is hard and there are no positives to balance out the negatives?
What if the reconciliation is hard and there are no positives to balance out negatives? You cannot reconcile. You cannot reconcile. And this is why that's so difficult for people to understand. They think that forgiveness immediately equals reconciliation. It does not. You can't. How can you take me into your home if I'm still a gambler, a drug dealer, and I'll break every glass that you have and steal every $1,000 that you put on the table? You're not going to let me in your home. What's the first of those four things? Boundaries. You set a boundary. So for those who are asking online, thank you. Great question. Because you cannot reconcile. It's a different process. It's now EST 2:30 to 29. Thank you for your attention. Can I hand it back over to you, Thomas, to close us up? Oh, no, actually, I'm going to ask Joshua, so you're ready. I'm going to hand it to Joshua, who was graciously behind the scene, making everything work. Just close us up. Thanks. And I'm going to do the draw shortly.
Sure, let's pray. Lord God, we thank you that you teach us what true forgiveness looks like. We have no hope to follow after, no model that is perfect except for you, Lord. And Lord, while we were still sinners, you loved us. Lord, while we were still your enemies, Lord, you forgave us. Lord, and with that, even as we are called to love our enemies, Lord, it is your Spirit that dwells in us, that encourages us, that empowers us, that gives us the hope to love others, to forgive, to desire to be reconciled. God, and we know, and we know that you know, because you know our hearts, that is not easy. Lord, really it's impossible if not for you, you working in us, you convicting our hearts, you making us more like you. Lord, I pray for those of us who are here, Lord, and for our loved ones as well too. Lord, as we wrestle with what forgiveness looks like, God, that you would fill us with your abundant grace. Lord, that it would not be merely something theoretical or hypothetical that we talk about, but something that we would be able to experience in this life, Lord. And so, Lord, we commit ourselves, we commit our relationships to you, Lord, for those whom we love, for our enemies, for our frenemies, Lord, in the messiness of it all, Lord, we look to you, Lord, as you are the one to whom we look for the gospel of how you make all things new. Lord, and so we thank you. And Lord, may your kingdom come. May your will be done here on earth, here in our lives, in our relationships, in our communities, as it is in heaven. We pray this in your name, Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
I have two things outstanding. So one of those things is two things outstanding. One of those things is that you have, I hope you've had, for those of those who don't know us, this thing that you've taken. And this thing is an invitation for you to come for a Christmas Eve service that we have. So please take one of those and plan to come for Christmas Eve. On this thing, there is an email address, justchurch at 18. But you can also write us on the email that you receive for your seminar. What I want to do is offer for us a 4-week Bible study. I'll put together a Bible study for four weeks. It will be planned so that we can look at the Bible as to see what forgiveness is in the Bible. Ask any number of questions you want. It will be a small group of us who will be gathering. If you want to be involved in the Bible study, I'll be happy to conduct one for us. Just get a crucial number of people and we can get together to do that. All right? The second thing which I want to do is to see what we can do with this. When I got this thing, it's actually stone. I don't know if you actually got it, right? You saw it. It's stone, right? It's pretty hefty. It's a indoor-outdoor garden clock. You can put it in your house if you have a balcony garden, right? So that's a prize that we want to give away as a gift to anyone whose name is picked out. So I'm going to do this, all right? I'm going to mix it all up. And Tom here. Anybody bribe Tom? You can bribe him, he can pick up anything, then still read your name, right? You're unbribable, are you?
I mean, if anyone did try, first off, it'd be hard to find me. Secondly, right.
Just say this, he's unbribable, okay? All right. You read it.
Oh. Making sure I didn't do a very good job first time. Double checking.
Don't think that you were the first one, okay? All right. Who do we have?
Anne De Silva.
Anne! Come on, Anne. Eh? You give it up. Okay. All right. Wow. Thank you. Here we go.
I'll do it right this time.
Yeah. You did it right the first time. That's why you gave it up. That's right.
Matthias Open.
Matthias is 2 years old. Where is he? Go get your son. Go get your son. I don't think Matthias is old enough to reject this, so he can take this home. It's toddling here over here with those 2-foot length legs. So, oh, free books, yes. While we're waiting, there are all kinds of free books in the back. One of our people was moving and had a huge library, and it says, I can't move this to a smaller location, so he's got free books for people to take. All right? It's on that stand over there. Okay. Where's Matthias? He's coming? Ah, Shade, come. Eh? Oh, why don't I get Fortune to come up forward and take it on his behalf?
Oh, they said pass it on.
Oh, pass it on.
I keep doing this wrong.
Okay. So the third person has to stick, okay? We can't do this all night, it's get empty. What?
I grabbed one. Empty or what's going on?
No, really. Yeah.
Hopefully it's not Dan again.
It's Tom.
Fortune open.
No! I'm going to give it to you to give to him. Thank you to Tom, everyone. Do come back for our Christmas Eve service. It's on the 24th at 7 o'clock in the evening. That's when we're having. Same location. And there's a New Year's Eve as well. And if you come for Sundays, it's 11 o'clock every Sunday. For those of you who are not early risers, 11 o'clock works. All right. God bless you.